Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Sourcegraph podcast. I'm here today with Sugu Sougoumarane. He's the CTO and co-founder of PlanetScale, the serverless database platform. It gives you a horizontally scalable SQL database that's super developer friendly and just works. It's built on top of this really cool open source project called Vitesse, which Sugu also created. Starting when he was at YouTube, working on scaling the YouTube backend to serve the billions of users and viewers that it handles today. And chances are, if you're watching this, the video form of this podcast, you're probably using a lot of the infrastructure that Sugu wrote and created. So Sugu, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you. Excited to join you.
Awesome. So I always like to kick things off by asking people, we have a lot of accomplished guests. They've done amazing work. But if you go back to the beginning of your programmer, life, what was it that initially got you into coding and computers?
Well, I'm a little older, old enough that when I joined college, first I went to college. I actually took double E. And when I joined college, I did not know what a computer was. So
Huh.
we are talking 1981. I'm probably revealing my age there, but I did not know what a computer was.
Wow.
It's only 2 years. My school, BITS Pilani, did have a computer science degree, but I had no idea what that was.
Interesting.
I didn't even choose that option when I applied that because I didn't. What is this science thing? I
Yeah.
want to be an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's only and there was one mandatory programming course that everyone had to do. That was actually enforced only at BITS at that time, probably,
Huh.
and that was my first exposure to computer. And when I saw it, that just completely blew my mind. The kind of things you could do.
Yeah.
I learned the first language they taught me was Pascal.
Nice. How did you like that?
Actually, it's one of the better languages because it makes you organize your thoughts.
Yeah.
You just don't write code. You have to think about what you want to do, how you want to express it. So
Interesting.
that early discipline, carried over.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I haven't looked back since I did that course. And I was after that I was secretly regretting not having taken computer science. So
So you graduated as a double E.
I graduated as a double E, but
Okay.
what I did was I actually took as many computer science optional courses as I could,
Nice.
and got myself a computer science job.
Cool.
Yeah,
What was
that's
that?
how it started.
What was that first computer science job that you got?
The first computer science job was with computer graphics. It was
Okay.
computer graphics, but based on geo. So
Okay.
we were trying to build a geographical information system. Actually, I don't know if that company still exists. There's a company called Esri, ESRI.
Esri.
Y-
Okay.
they were there even those days. They were kind of the leader at that time
Huh.
on they called it GIS, Geographical Information Systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So but the reason why I liked it is because it was essentially computer graphics. You had to actually take maps and render them on the screen. It was miracle those days. This is 1985. Yeah,
Yeah.
85. Like being able to display a map on a computer screen was like unbelievably awesome.
Yeah. Because in
So,
those days, most people ran something like DOS. It's like a
yeah.
command line OS,
This
right?
was on MS DOS.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually C was older than that, but it had just become popular in India,
Huh.
and we were kind of the first ones. There was something called the Glockenspiel. It was
What is
only a
that?
translator at that time. There were no C
Okay.
compilers.
Yeah.
No, this was C++. C++ had the Glockenspiel, but C did have a compiler. So it was in C, uh, but then you directly wrote to the monitor. There were no drivers or anything.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Those were I started off in so it was essentially computer graphics for a few years,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went into C++ and other other things.
Awesome. And I understand somewhere along the line you ended up at PayPal somehow. Is that right?
Yes. How did I end up at PayPal? Actually, before PayPal, one relevant piece of experience is the time I spent at Informix.
Okay.
This was 90s, early 90s.
Okay.
So that's how I actually came to US. I came to US on a contract job to work at Informix.
Interesting.
And strangely, at that time, I was not directly working on the database. I worked on IDEs. Informix was developing an IDE for 4GL. I think that was the buzzword those days.
Huh.
Fourth generation language is what they called it.
Huh.
Like, what is beyond C and C++, right?
Yeah.
We now
Yeah.
have these fourth generation languages. It was really not fourth generation.
Yeah. What
But that's what
generation was it?
it was more of a low level a lower level programming language than even C,
Oh,
but where
okay.
you could embed SQL. It's basically SQL and C were
Interesting.
first class citizens, so there was no need to escape out into a different paradigm.
Got it. So Informix was kind of like this database system with this so-called fourth generation
Fourth
language,
generation
and
language, and
okay,
I was developing an IDE for that.
interesting.
Yeah, but eventually Informix, I don't know if many people may not remember this history, but the big scandal happened where they cooked the books and got caught,
Oh
and
wow.
so company kind of went. The company barely recovered, and finally IBM just bought them out.
Oh no.
But I had left Informix by then. That's how that was actually in the 90s when the internet started booming,
Yeah.
and I realized that this is what I'm doing now is not the future.
Hmm.
So I essentially, for me, coming over to PayPal was a career change.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting story that I had a run-in with Elon Musk on my way to on my way into PayPal, which is a pretty interesting story.
Yeah. Tell us that story. What happened between you and Elon Musk?
So this was year 2000. Elon had just founded X.com. He had
Okay.
sold off Zip2, which was his previous company,
Okay.
and he was considered one of those up and coming entrepreneurs. He wasn't
Yeah.
as popular as he is today.
Yeah.
But when I read X.com, if you read the description then, it said that it was an online bank.
Okay.
So it's basically Wells Fargo, there's Bank of America. Now
Sure.
there's X.com, which basically is a bank that is trying to bring, internet,
Yeah.
trying to add into like an internet first bank,
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
so that's what it looked like. So I said, wow, so if it's a bank, I better be formal. So I wore a tie and suit.
Oh no. And
Uh,
I'm assuming the dress code was a lot less formal.
not even like that turned him off instantly. So I'm sitting
Interesting.
there. He walks in and says, "Who the hell are you?" I'm here for an interview. Oh, why are you wearing a suit?
That's hilarious.
so, so it turned out that uh, this is 2000 where the boom was happening,
Uh-huh.
99, 2000.
Uh-huh.
And there were so many Me Too companies
Mm-hmm.
that saying, I'm going to change the world kind of
Sure. A lot of
companies.
copycats.
And
Yeah.
I had been interviewing
Mm-hmm.
with a bunch of them, and none of them were. none of them had a real story. They were a lot of them were just they didn't even have code written, but had raised
Wow.
money from VCs because that's how desperate VCs were, to give you money.
Yeah.
Anybody that said I have an idea got money.
This is the height of the bubble.
Yeah, it was the height of the bubble. So I had interviewed and I was completely disillusioned, saying that my God, this is a disaster. Like there is not a single company that has anything viable.
Huh.
So I show up there. I'm kind of very low energy because I don't expect anything from this interview because
Sure.
all previous interviews were disasters in my opinion. I just walked out.
Yeah, yeah,
And this one, I was like, okay, let's hear it out, let's see what you got.
yeah.
And so that came across to Elon as a guy who has no energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was kind of disappointed. And I was wearing a suit. No, that's even worse.
Two strikes.
Two strikes, and I am like, and as I'm hearing his story, by the time the interview ended, I was so excited by what he was building. I
Huh.
just couldn't believe. I said, "Oh my God, this will change the world." That's basically how I ended up leaving.
Yeah.
But that's not how he ended up seeing me.
Sure.
So later down the line, and I went through a recruiter.
Okay.
So and the recruiter says, "Hey, guy, hey, now they are going to pass on you.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, they're not interested. They think you have low energy." I said, "What?
That sucks.
Give me Elon's email. No, I'll send him an email." So I sent him an email. Essentially, I guess what uh, paraphrasing what I did was
Yeah.
I basically sold him back his own company.
Huh.
I told him why this is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And it turns out that apparently he was struggling to convince his the greatness of his company to his own employees.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so he saw that, and he was impressed that I was able to see what he saw. He even sent that email apparently to everyone,
Wow.
and told them, "See, there's a guy outside, who believes in what we are doing." And so he called me back for an interview, and now I can now looking back, I can see everybody was smiling. Everybody like was passing by,
Huh.
giving me second looks and smiling
You
because
were
they
the
all knew,
guy. You're
yeah, I
the
was that
email
guy.
guy. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, the rest is history. Then I joined X.com, and then soon after that, X.com and PayPal merged,
Okay.
and that's how I ended up at PayPal.
Do you remember what it is you said in that email? Because I'm sure everyone who's listening who's ever bombed an interview, which is I think everyone is like, what do you say? What do you say in an email that gets you that like second chance with Elon Musk of all people?
So I think actually I relate to what I said even now, because what I said was the most important thing is that I am sold on this vision and I
Hmm.
will do anything to be part of it.
Hmm.
Is essentially what I said.
Yeah.
I don't care what you offer me, but
Yeah.
this is like, this vision is awesome. This is going to change the world. So I want to be part of this. I don't care. My low energy, don't
Yeah.
that's because of situational.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, don't read into that. I need to dig up that email. I don't think I was as eloquent as I am now.
If you dig it up, we'll link to it in the show notes
Yeah,
if we
I'll
can.
find out.
We'd
I'll
love
see if I
to.
can find it. This is literally 21 years ago. So
Yeah,
so
hopefully. I was trying to think of email systems back then.
yeah, exactly.
Do you even
So
remember what email you used in those
I think it
days?
was Yahoo.
Oh, Yahoo. Okay.
Yeah.
That,
So
no.
so it may still be there. It may still be
Yeah.
there. I should go look for it.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. So he may not remember me, but I think if I reminded him of the story, he will remember me. If I meet him ever again, if I told him this,
Yeah. Yeah.
this
It seems pretty memorable. I mean, someone
yes,
comes in and sells your company back to you so well, like probably better than he could describe it. And he
yeah.
shared it with the entire company. That's awesome. So, talk about joining X.com and then PayPal. What was that experience like?
So this is so X.com PayPal was an equal merger. It was
Yeah.
and it was actually a difficult merger because X.com was a Windows shop
Hmm.
and PayPal was a Linux slash Unix shop.
Huh.
So PayPal was running. The PayPal is even pre-LAMP. PayPal was running
Wow.
Linux on Oracle, and
Wow.
X.com was running Windows with COM. This is pre C Sharp, Windows with COM and SQL Server,
Okay. Old school.
old school. And when the two companies merged, um, something had to give. We had to choose a platform, and since Elon was the resulting CEO, he said we are choosing Windows because
Hmm.
that's what it is.
Elon's a Windows guy, huh?
Elon was a Windows guy. I don't know what he is now, but then he was definitely a Windows guy then.
Huh.
And the entire team was Windows. And
Hmm.
and the funny part was that they hired me thinking that I'm a Linux guy that has to be trained on Windows. But I was also a Windows guy.
Oh,
I did,
interesting.
even though I was at Informix, I was one of the few people at Informix that was a Windows person because I
Huh.
was developing an IDE and IDEs existed only in Windows.
Interesting.
There was no GUI for
Microsoft
Linux.
pioneered the IDE. Like they was,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Visual Studio.
yeah, which makes
Uh,
total sense.
yeah, and Linux didn't even have a GUI then. It had a very it
Hmm.
was mostly command line, so there was no chance of an IDE in
Yeah.
Linux in 2000, in 99 2000.
Huh.
So so in any case, I started being productive right from day one because I knew all the things. I knew the entire stack. So all I had to do was learn the code and start writing code.
Mm-hmm.
But this tussle continued for a while, and eventually reorg and everything happened. And the final decision was we are staying with PayPal because what had happened during that time was PayPal.com uh, had gathered momentum,
Hmm.
and there was it would have been hard to retrofit Windows underneath there.
Yeah.
So the decision was to actually uh, go back to PayPal and then build on that. So I moved over and kind of had to learn Linux, without telling anyone,
Yeah.
and start writing features for the new system.
Yeah.
So I think about I might have spent about 6 months churning, writing code that never went to production.
Ooh, that's painful.
Yeah, yeah.
What sort of work was there any work that you did back in those days that ended up being useful later on? You know, when you started working on Vitesse and PlanetScale?
Oh yes, yeah. So the big thing for me, which was really hard, I don't know if you know about the PayPal uh, gang there, the founding PayPal members. They were all geniuses from UIUC.
Interesting.
More,
Is this the like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and
it's the
or
Max Levchin
okay, the
gang.
Max Levchin crowd. Okay,
Yeah, Max Levchin is from UIUC, and UIUC, a bunch of those people were fed from a school called IMSA, which is called International Math and Society Academy, which is kind of a school for gifted children or something.
I see. So super high IQ.
Super high IQ. They were. So I was literally completely intimidated by the amount of brain power
Huh.
that was around me.
That's awesome.
And I had to figure out a way to, uh, prove my existence, justify that I'm useful when these people used to produce like the kinds of features that they were producing.
Yeah.
And so what I did was there was a problem that everyone hated, and it was actually the most problematic part of PayPal. Oh, there's an interesting story behind this.
Huh.
So I don't know if you've read the old PayPal business model. Originally, when PayPal
Mm.
was founded, the way we raised money was we told them that we will allow people to send money to each other,
Yeah.
and we will make money from the float by investing the fact that when people are sending money with each other, we'll have some
Interesting.
float money and we'll make
Yeah.
money off of that, right? So that was the business model
Huh.
uh, that that was proposed. You can probably find it if you if you search for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And but this was like engineers writing code that moved money. What were they doing? Is they were inserting rows into a transaction table and updating the user balance
Yeah.
and doing a commit, and
Yeah.
moving on. And obviously, guess what happens? There are bugs in the software. There's
I,
so at some point of time, auditors came and said, "Okay, show us your books." And so they add up the transactions. They look at the user balances. There's a few $1 million missing, and they are like, "Where are these? Where is this money?" And we're like, "Oh, that's all in the float." It's float money, it's being invested
Okay.
somewhere,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're making. No, no,
They didn't accept that
no.
answer. They're like, no, that's.
That kind of hand waving doesn't go well in the financial industry. So they basically asked us to account for every penny, and so somebody hacked up a tool,
Mm-hmm.
but that, like, because of the fact that developers were writing software and
Mm-hmm.
there was bugs, that tool used to like post discrepancies or report discrepancies every day,
Yeah.
and every day or every other day, and every time it posted, somebody had to go in and investigate.
Okay.
And millions of transactions, how do you find out where things went wrong?
Yeah.
And so there was like a victim engineer that was selected every once in a while when this it was called the activity report. When the activity report reported conflicts, the guy said, "Okay, my life is gone today because I
You had
have
to
to
go
find,
through and like manually resolve these
yeah, figure out where
discrepancies.
the difference came from."
What?
So then I said, "You know what? Give me that tool. I will own this."
Wow.
It was the most painful thing. Everybody hated it. So I said, "I will own this problem."
Huh.
And I completely rewrote that tool to the extent that if it reported discrepancy, it would find out either a transaction. It will find out the transaction that caused the discrepancy and the user's account and how much the account will say this is the culprit that caused the discrepancy.
Interesting. And it
And
did that like completely automated. Like it.
yeah, yeah. So it would
Okay.
run every night. Look at all the transactions. Look at every user's balance,
Okay.
and then and it had to be done efficiently because you can't loop through users. So
Sure.
I had to run some smart queries that did uh, diffs in different format,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then that was used to identify the offending transaction.
Okay.
And so people loved me for it. They said, "Wow, Sugu solved a real problem."
Sounds like you're the hero. I mean, every single day when an engineer would have to be like on call to handle these things.
Yeah, so after that I kind of got accepted into the
That was
elite.
how you establish your.
Yeah, otherwise
Okay.
I was not one of the elite engineers. I was. So after that, say, Sugu is
Oh,
cool. So
yeah, yeah.
if there's a problem, we can count on Sugu to solve it.
That's fascinating. Okay. So you respected they respected you
Yeah, so I kind of
after that.
earned the respect. So yeah,
Okay.
it was very hard to earn that type of respect. Uh, you had to
Yeah.
you had to show something for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did all this relate eventually to the work on Vitessin? Was it just like
So
digging
the
through
way this
databases?
happened, so after that, right? So when they said Sugu solves problems,
Yeah.
I kind of went into uh, scaling, solving. So at that point, the biggest challenge for PayPal was always scaling.
Hmm.
So scaling PayPal, I was kind of became part of that core team
I see.
that was responsible for scaling PayPal. And this is another story you may not know. We tried to shard PayPal
You tried to
when
shard it, like split the databases out
split
into
the database
different
into smaller
pieces.
parts,
Okay.
and that experiment failed. Not for technical reasons, but nevertheless the experiment failed,
So
and
it
we
failed.
had to
So
roll back.
all PayPal was literally on a single giant
Yes,
database. What was the database? Just out of curiosity, like
Oracle.
Oracle. Okay, Oracle. So one
It
giant
was
Oracle
yes,
database instance.
it was
Okay.
Oracle, and
How big was it? Yeah,
we
sorry.
had the biggest hardware money could buy.
Which
And
was
when
what
I
in those days? Do you remember?
it was a Sun, it was called the Sunfire, the Sun E15K, I believe.
Okay.
It was the biggest machine Sun ever produced. It's like if Sun made a new, more powerful machine, we bought it. So I think we had an E10K before that, and then after that we bought something called the E15K,
And
and
it was one box, literally one
one
box.
box. One we had two E15Ks because there was a hot standby.
Okay, got it. Yeah, for
Yeah, so that's
failover.
how
Yeah,
Oracle ran.
makes sense.
Yeah, the only hint I can give you is after that outage, we migrated out of E15K into uh, Fujitsu. That happened after I left,
Okay.
but there is a hint in there.
What is the?
There was a there was an operating system slash hardware problem combined together that
I
caused
see.
the outage. We thought it was the sharding, but it was not the sharding.
Okay.
But nevertheless, we had to roll back the sharding
Okay.
after that happened, and then after that, I left PayPal, and uh, I didn't quite immediately leave PayPal because after that I went to India to open uh, the PayPal India office,
Okay.
and that was when YouTube was formed here. But I came back and joined YouTube when I decided to come back.
I see. And YouTube was where Vitesse was born, right?
YouTube was Vitesse was born, and it's not a coincidence
Okay.
that that kind of is in some way the reason why Vitesse was born. In some respect, the fact that the sharding experiment in PayPal failed
Mm-hmm.
remained with all of us,
Hmm.
and we were all motivated because we believed that sharding was the way to go, was the best way to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And in YouTube, we redid that sharding and made it work. And the night we succeeded, the first sharding, this was pre-Vitesse. Vitesse was born after our first time sharding.
Okay.
We had a huge celebration, and we were all like, we stand cleansed. No one can tell us that we don't know sharding.
It works.
It works. Sharding works, and here is the proof.
So you had a bunch of? Did you have a bunch of ex PayPalers from that team
Yeah,
also
yeah.
with you?
So
Okay, so you had a lot of.
most of early YouTube are all ex-PayPalers. So
Oh,
YouTube was
interesting. I didn't
founded
know that.
by Steve and Chad.
Yeah.
Steve, they were both PayPal engineers. Steve, Chad,
Oh,
and Javed, and we all worked together at. Javed actually was sitting right next to me
got it. Got it.
at PayPal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been like when they started YouTube, I went to India because I wanted to see if I could go and move back there permanently.
Yeah.
But then after a while, we decided to come back. We
Okay.
said, we had we gave it some time. We tried it.
Yeah.
We decided to come back.
Yeah.
All kinds of reasons, all personal stuff.
Sure.
But and while I was there, Steve and everybody else, all the other engineers at YouTube, was like, dude, what the hell are you doing there? We are exploding. You should come and join YouTube. It's like out of control. Then finally, when I decided to come, I said, okay, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I came back and joined, and then soon after that, Google bought YouTube.
Yeah. So what was the problem that you're working on at YouTube that necessitated scaling out MySQL? What was that? Was it storing video data or something else or?
Oh no, so video
Okay.
data was not stored in MySQL.
Okay.
Video data was stored in CDNs.
Okay. That makes sense.
I actually don't know. I believe we used a CDN service. In other words, I don't think we stored the data
Oh,
ourselves.
it was just like Akamai or something
I
like
think it
that,
was
or
Akamai.
okay.
Most likely Akamai, because that name does ring a bell.
Yeah.
So we stored the video data, uh, and Akamai would spread it around the world,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and take care of that part. But it was metadata. Metadata was growing too fast. We couldn't keep up.
What does metadata encompass? Is that like comments and descriptions and
Comments,
titles?
videos, user information.
Huh.
Yeah, just like apparently the insert rate in the video was so high that we
Like
could not keep up with the inserts.
because like
We could not insert fast enough,
there were so many comments that people were leaving on videos or
and
like
so many videos being created.
oh wow, okay, so just the number of videos being created, that's
So we are
crazy.
talking hard disks, right? This is 2005,
So spinny
2005,
discs.
2006, spinning disks. You can only insert so fast.
Wow. Okay, so you had it was too big for even like the largest single box money could buy. Too big for
Yes.
one MySQL
Yep.
instance, and so you started work on sharding it. Um,
Yep.
at, at what point did sharded MySQL become Vitesse? Was there like a single point where you like decided to give it a name to it, or was it even the same project, or was it?
It was not the same. It was actually so this the history is the way we ended up with this is we had sharded the MySQL database. We
Yeah.
had I believe 8 shards, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Because 8 shards should be more than enough, right?
Yeah. 8 shards should be enough for
I mean,
anyone.
we went so far with 1 shard.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
8 shards, we can scale 8x.
Yeah.
So we are all set for the rest of our lives, is what we thought. So uh, where was I going? So
You had eight
so we had
shards.
we had 8 shards, and what was happening was that at 8 shards, the shards themselves were okay. We had
Okay.
not reached their capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But what had happened was that managing those 8 shards became a huge pain
Hmm.
for a number of reasons. And essentially, the place where we were in at that point was that there were very frequent outages,
Mm-hmm.
like couple of outages a day kind of thing, where no
Because
one, yeah,
one
there
shard would
was
go
no
down.
peace in
Okay.
our in infra organization. There was no peace
Got it.
uh, because there was always an outage going on, and every time it was the database.
Hmm.
So it was almost like, oh, there's an outage, okay, let's start looking at the database, because that's where the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most of the time that was the case. And so the thing that my co-creator, and I did, actually most of that work was done by him.
Mm-hmm.
What he did was he just basically took himself out and wrote a spreadsheet. And what he did was, there was no postmortem process those days,
No five
post
whys. No.
yeah,
Yeah.
none of that stuff. So but he kind of went through that. But what he did was he made a spreadsheet of every failure, that we had ever faced,
Yeah.
like every one of those outages,
Yeah.
what caused it, and what can we do to prevent it. And so he wrote, it was a huge spreadsheet. I may even be able to dig it up again. It should
How
be there somewhere.
how many
Uh,
did he manually compiled?
yeah, he sat and like wrote like every outage that he had seen, that he remembered.
Wow.
So he wrote it down, and like what could solve it.
Huh.
And so by the end of that spreadsheet, when we looked at that spreadsheet, it was obvious that we had to, and the goal was to actually do something that will leap ahead of all these problems.
Hmm.
that will not only solve the problems of today, but also future problems that we are likely to have.
Yeah.
So when we looked at the spreadsheet, it was obvious that we had to build a new software
Yeah.
uh, to handle all these cases, because
Can you give me a sense of like what the common pain points were like in this spreadsheet? Do you remember what the like big order?
there were a bunch of them.
Okay.
The biggest one that actually, the first saving thing that Vitesse did for YouTube was connection pooling.
Hmm.
We had the number of, as the system was scaling, the number of front end servers were scaling,
Yeah.
and they were all, each one of them had an open connection to MySQL.
Okay.
And beyond about 5,000 connections, MySQL would start to crawl.
How many front end instances were there
We
at
had
that point?
thousands.
Oh, okay, thousands, all
Yeah,
talking to the same 8 shards.
yeah, all connected to the 8 shards. So we had moved some of those out to replicas, for example.
Yeah.
We were managing that. We were managing those connections. But even there, like if a master went down,
Yeah.
what would happen is these 5,000 connections would instantly try to reconnect and
Okay.
instantly bring down the MySQL. So it was a thundering herd cascading failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was, for example, the first problem that we had to solve.
Yeah. I see.
So we wrote a proxy that will stand, that can take 5,000 connections, but will only make 20 connections to MySQL.
Got it. And so that was that the beginning of
That was the
Vitesse?
beginning of Vitesse. So that was the first problem that we solved. But then we solved other problems where if you see a query, that did not have a limit
Yeah.
clause, we would add it.
Okay, just like any query that goes by like has to have,
Yeah.
this makes total
Why
sense.
is
You
this
can't ask
query
for
not limiting the number of rows it's retrieving?
Yeah.
Because what if you end up scanning the entire table?
Yeah, yeah. And of
Right?
course, like that's not always top of mind for the application level
Yeah,
developer.
like
It's
when
just
the
like
developer initially wrote, say,
yeah.
this. Here's a fantastic example. Um, when we were saying who would upload more than 100 videos?
Who in their right mind?
Who in their right mind would upload more than 100 videos? So and then you discover there was one particular case where there was someone who had uploaded 250,000 videos only. That's actually a low number, by the way.
Or were they actual videos or was
Yeah,
it
they I mean, who cares? There were
okay.
250,000 video records.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And
And you had to they were all rows in the database that
they
you had to
were
be
all
able
rows
to
in the database.
yeah.
So if I thought,
Yeah,
I could
okay.
select all the videos of a user,
Yeah, yeah,
I got 250,000 rows back. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that some admin that was curating the index page of YouTube decided to feature that user
Oh.
in YouTube's homepage.
So it's on the front page. Everyone's
On the
getting
front
it.
page.
Every
So
one of
which means
those.
that every hit on the front page ended up fetching 250,000 videos.
Got it. Got it.
So one of the things that we wrote was, well, how do we protect against this?
Yeah.
So the way we did this was, again, we had this proxy, right? So this proxy, every time it got a query, it would check if the same query is already executing. If it is already executing, it won't send it to MySQL. It will just wait for that result, and then
It's kind of like batching the requests, like
or consolidating.
consolidating.
Yeah. So so this was an expensive query. At any given point of time, only one of those can run. If the site got spammed with the same query, it won't end up spamming the database.
Yeah.
At any given point, if that finishes, another one will start. But all other thundering herd requests will wait and will just share the result.
Yeah.
So stuff like this we started adding. And at that time, Vitesse had only VT tablet, which was its only job is to protect MySQL, the single MySQL instance.
Okay.
That
what is VT tablet? I'm actually unfamiliar with that.
So VT tablet was the proxy that we first wrote. That was essentially
okay.
the Vitesse project.
I see.
Now
Got
it
it.
is a project that has many other components.
Got it. Got
So
it.
when we wrote it, it was not actually meant to manage sharding. It was only meant to
Proxying.
manage your cluster.
I see. Interesting.
And then later, then later that evolved into, hey, is it ever possible to make the system so generic that someone other than YouTube, that wanted to shard could use
Yeah.
it? And that was the beginning of what you see as Vitess today.
So,
So
so
that
how did you convince Google, the company, that this was worth open sourcing? I mean, my understanding was that originally for YouTube, the internal system specifically. Did you have to kind of fight to
not at all, not at all.
Okay.
Actually, it was extremely easy and straightforward.
Huh.
Google was, I believe it is still that type of company
Yeah,
where
that's
if
awesome.
you want to start a project, if you're starting a project and think that this is worthy of being open sourced,
Yeah.
the only thing they want to make sure is that you're not like, it's not exposing anything, any company secrets that are really critical to Google's business. As
Yeah.
long as that is not the case, you got pretty much approval. The only thing they made sure, so our decision, like that is Google's agreement to open source, but
Yeah.
our own decision to open source was a very selfish decision at that point. Was, you know what, if we build this system, I don't want to have to rebuild this if I went somewhere else,
Yeah, of course.
right? So, and there is nothing proprietary in here,
Yeah.
and so we are going to open source this. And
Yeah,
so
that's
we
awesome.
decided to open source it. So Vitess, actually, I don't know how many rules of Google we broke by doing what we did, which is we created a subversion repository in our home directory and
Okay.
checked in all the code into that repository.
Just on your local machine.
Local machine, as it was the home directory was a mounted drive, so it was a
Okay.
Google mounted drive,
I see.
network drive. So it was
Okay.
on a network drive.
But
It was not checked into Google's.
you took it out of the monorepo.
It was not in the monorepo. It was developed all in our home directory.
Got it. Oh,
Because we
you did
had
that intentionally because it would be easier to kind of.
it, so that it was easier to
I
open source
see.
it, right? Because
Yeah.
initially we didn't want to start off by open sourcing.
Sure.
So we developed it in the directory. We deployed it within YouTube. So our deployment scripts used to read off of our home directory.
And no one called you on that? You're just able to kind of get away with that?
Yeah, it was okay. Well, the fact of the matter is we were the ones who we were the callers.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were the enforcers.
It was all in the family. Like
It was
all
all in the
the. Yeah,
family.
yeah. Okay.
So it was well understood, and Google's home directory is pretty secure that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then finally, when and even when we went to the Google open source team and told them this, they were not shocked or anything. They said, "Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's like it's not it's not no different from you developing some code,
Yeah.
So yeah, because it was backed up, it was secure. We're not going to lose that file system. You could so it had all
Yeah.
the security, so there was no fear of.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So give me a sense of timeline. So when did Vitesse as a project, like when was the beginning of that, and then when was it open sourced for the first time?
So I believe we started the project in 2010.
Okay.
It went into production in 2011,
Okay.
and we open sourced it in 2012. So about
2012. Okay, got it.
2012, I think, is when we first open sourced it. So initially we had named it Voltron.
Voltron. Is that a Pokemon or no?
It's
It's
the
a
it's
cart.
it's a Japanese cartoon.
Okay.
I think it is something where 5 different pieces come together to form this big giant thing.
Okay, got it. Yeah, one of
And the
those.
idea was that Vitesse is a bunch of pieces that come together to.
Oh, I see.
So that model still makes sense because Vitesse is a distributed system, where a
Yeah.
bunch of components come and work together.
Yeah.
So we named it Voltron, and obviously we could not open source with that name
Because of
because
copyright.
copyrights and
Yeah.
stuff. So we had to come up with a new name. And the problem was that because we had named it Voltron, all our files and things were named VT something.
Okay, so you had constraints.
I had constraints. So that's when I don't know if you know about if you know about Strong Bad. Not many people know.
Oh, Homestar Runner?
Homestar Runner,
Oh
yes.
yeah, come on. Yeah. People who were on the internet
Yeah,
in 2000s era, right? The
2000s,
Flash
yes,
era.
2000.
Yeah.
We used
Homestar.
to watch every release, by the way. We used to wait for it.
Doing the email and
Yeah, Belit,
yeah, but we oh
so
man.
so in Voltron, in Homestar Runner, there is one episode where somebody asks him, I have this project. I want to give it a cool name. Like, how do I come up with a cool name? And he replies, all you have to do is take an already existing name and completely mess up the spelling, and now you have a cool name. Like if you say limousine, put some Z's in there,
I actually remember this video. That
Oh, you
was
do?
yeah. So that's how Vitesse
Yeah, so vitesse is a misspelling of the French word vitesse, which means speed.
Okay.
So vitesse in French ends with an E,
Yeah.
and vitesse, the project has no E at the end.
Got it.
So that was, and then it had VT in it, so it was perfect. So
Yeah. That
uh,
that's awesome. So how did you so Vitesse started 2010 and open sourced in 2012. At what point did you start thinking like there might be a company that we could build on top of this technology?
so I never, for the longest time, I never intended to start a company because uh, why, right? Like why like
Yeah. Don't start a company for the sake of starting a
for the
company.
sake of starting a
Yeah.
company. I was actually previously approached by VCs
Huh.
who said, oh my God, what are you sitting on? You should start a company.
Yeah.
Then no, not interested.
Yeah.
But 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 I guess they saw what the VC saw. They saw the writing on the wall. They were trying to even convince me, and I wasn't sold. But I guess I also started seeing the writing on the wall.
Which VCs do you feel comfortable sharing
Uh
them? Like, were there any like really good ones in the
yeah,
beginning?
yeah. Actually, Amplify Partners
Oh, nice.
was one
Yeah,
of them.
Amplify is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, we work with them as well.
they like our initial round was not by them,
Mm-hmm.
but they did plant the idea, and
Yeah.
we did talk to them. We told them, yeah,
Yeah.
you are the people that see, you told us 3 years ago, and here I am.
Yeah. Okay, so
S-
that got you kind of thinking about
kind
the.
of, it was in the back of my mind.
Okay.
I was even willing to encourage other people to start a company and say, if you start a company, I'd help you
Hmm.
from within YouTube. I don't care.
Wow. Yeah.
But nobody did. But what had happened was that it was there were multiple reasons. Uh, what we needed was Vitesse to gain, like for YouTube, we felt that for YouTube to continue to use Vitesse, it had to become a mainstream project in its own right.
Okay.
Right. So that was
Yeah.
one motivation.
Yeah. Keep it
And
around. Yeah.
yeah, but then there were other motivations. The other motivation was at the eventually what is happening is YouTube was also changing as a company, uh, where the newer and newer talent that was coming in, they
Mm-hmm.
were all product oriented,
Hmm.
right? So
So less like back end infrastructure folks, more
exactly.
application.
So what is where does YouTube make money? YouTube does not make money by building Vitesse,
Sure.
right? YouTube makes money by producing videos,
Yeah.
publishing them, and stuff. So that's where naturally all the effort was going.
Yeah.
And at some point of time, YouTube was starting to ask, the newer management in YouTube was starting to ask, why are we funding this project?
Yeah.
Why should we be
Yeah.
and this, like, but then this project is gaining adoption outside, everybody's using it. we
Yeah.
need to we need this to be funded, otherwise,
Yeah.
so and then there was like there is spanner, within, and Google
Sure.
internally was saying, we don't know what this Vitesse is.
Just put it all in Spanner
You put it
and
all in spanner, that's
huh.
all, that is what is blessed within Google,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
you should move to that. So it all came to a point where, you know so that's when we decided that, so I started talking to people. I talked to Joe Beda and Craig McCluskey,
Mm-hmm.
who were the founders of Heptio.
Yeah.
So Jiten and I started talking to him, and because they kind of went through the same thing, they created Kubernetes
Yeah.
and ended up leaving YouTube to start
Heptio.
Heptio as a company,
Yeah.
and they also founded the CNCF.
Oh, I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were behind the foundation of CNCF.
Got it. Got it.
So they had done all that. So we kind of chatted with them, So Vitesse is in this stage, where YouTube, doesn't want to spend more money on it,
Yeah.
like how did you manage Kubernetes, So that's when they said, Vitesse should join CNCF. It's the perfect fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they kind of encouraged us to do it. So I went back and proposed to YouTube that we should donate Vitesse to CNCF. YouTube
Mm-hmm.
liked the idea,
Yeah.
so it's perfect, So then and the kind of understanding was that after that, I will, go and start a company for uh, on
Awesome.
Vitesse. So that's kind of how this all happened. So this happened during 2017,
Yeah.
and in 2018 we started the company.
2000. So the company is quite young, even though Vitesse has been around.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that was actually very well received by that was actually what the community was missing,
Yeah.
because Vitesse is not something that it's not like a tooling that you try today, you don't like it, throw it out tomorrow. No? It stores your core data,
It's
core infrastructure.
foundational. Yeah.
It's foundational. You cannot migrate out of it, for any reason. Once you are into it, you are in it forever. And so companies like were hesitant to adopt Vitesse because, like, what if
There was no one to
Sugu
pay. They
yeah,
need. They
what if
needed
Sugu
someone to
finds
pay.
a new shiny,
Yeah. 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 That's awesome.
So when I started the company, people said, okay, now we have somebody, like, we can
Yeah.
count on Vitesse being there,
Yeah. Yeah.
being here to stay. So that definitely ramped up adoption of Vitesse.
Yeah. Tell me about the kind of key selling points of PlanetScale. So the front page says serverless database platform. What does that mean?
So here is what is changing
Mm-hmm.
in the industry. Vitesse actually was kind of, in some respect, the first step towards what PlanetScale became. Um, what Vitesse did was, like, at YouTube, we literally ran tens of thousands of nodes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's how big the Vitesse deployment was at YouTube,
Wow.
and there is no DBA team that can manage anything of that size.
It's just too many nodes.
Just 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 too many things, too many nodes, and those tens of thousands of nodes were running on Borg.
And Borg is kind of the Google internal predecessor to
Is the
Kubernetes.
predecessor of Kubernetes. It was in the Borg cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and the shutdown of a pod, is something that is not human generated.
Right.
So if you look at previous to that, even today, MySQL deployments, there is a DBA watching over that machine,
Super
right?
manual. It's
Super manual.
it's like a
And
pet,
when
not
we
a
deployed
yeah.
Vitesse in Borg, we had to kind of make it developer friendly, make it such that a DBA was not needed to be watching over those nodes. So we had to actually automate a large part of those things away,
I see.
so that we could deploy things at scale. So the DBA's role actually changed, where they were not they would not manage a single instance. They will be doing things for the cluster.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, now that trend is now more prominent. They are called DBEs or DBREs. There's lots of names.
They're going from kind of like minding individual pets to being like cattle
To
herders to
managing
use.
fleets,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was kind of what Vitess did
Okay.
for at YouTube, so which became extremely relevant at Kubernetes.
Yeah.
But it was still it still had an administrative mindset,
Okay.
where you still had to know a few things.
Sure.
The way I would describe, and now what Vitess is evolving into is, I kind of see two types of developers in the community.
Mm-hmm.
There are the tinkerers
Mm-hmm.
and there are the builders.
Yeah.
uh, there are application builders.
Yeah.
They are kind of non-overlapping. They want to do different types of things.
Yeah.
The tinkerers like to install software, configure it, play with it.
Sure.
Uh, Vitess is a tool that relates to that type of person. They
Got it.
like to learn. What is
Like
this V
nitty
schema?
gritty, get
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
hands dirty, roll up.
How
Yeah,
do I
yeah.
configure this relationship in this data?
Like diving
This
into
cool.
Unix internal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, this one level above Unix, it's more like understanding data,
I see.
modeling relationships with them,
It's like
doing cool things with the data. Like when you
okay.
shard, like optimizing
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
sharding algorithm. So that's what Vitess relates to.
Yep.
And then there's the other category, which is the application builder. They don't want to the if the biggest turn off to an application builder,
Mm-hmm.
you say, I want something. You say, how much CPU do you need? That's it. You've lost them.
Yeah, because
How
like
much disk space? I don't
I don't
know.
want to care. Just
I don't
figure
want
it
to.
out.
I don't know
Yeah,
how much I'm going to need. Whatever it takes.
yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
give me something to get started.
yeah,
So, or like, like those should be taken away. So, if the developer comes and says, I want a database, you say, here's a database. So
yeah.
that is, so the PlanetScale is for this person. The person says, I want a database, and we shouldn't ask any more questions.
Yeah.
You
It
want a
should just
database?
work.
Here's your database.
Yeah,
How do I connect to it? Here's your connection string.
yeah,
Go.
yeah.
And another big problem that PlanetScale solves is the problem that's been plaguing the database industry, which is managing schema deployment.
Right.
If you look at, if you go to any developer and if you ask them, why did you go, like a large number of them who like databases, right? Who like SQL,
Yeah.
many of them are using key value stores.
They like SQL, but they're using KV stores for some
Yeah, they
reason.
decide to use KV
Yeah,
stores.
yeah.
Say, why did you do it? It's because of schema. I just don't want to deal with the headache of schemas.
Huh.
It's almost a universal story.
Yeah.
But then what people have been, the database industry has been saying, well, it's necessary. Schema is necessary.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And you
needed.
and
Your
you're talking
database.
specifically about like schema, like migrations or like
eh,
conversions, right?
Yes, yes. So that's where the disconnect came, right?
Okay.
Nobody tried to go in and find out why schema is such a big headache.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like a type system, right? Like it imposes certain constraints, but then this thing can change
Yes,
too.
and not only that, it's not only a type system. It's a system. It's a disruptive system, right? The
Hmm.
moment you deploy schema, right, you make a small mistake, you have an outage that goes into many hours,
Yeah.
right?
I've
One
been there.
small fat finger,
Yeah.
and you have a enormous outage of
Yeah.
epic proportions.
Yeah.
So that's very scary. So you cannot just say, "Oh, here's schema change, boom, done."
Yeah. Yeah.
So these fears, and because this unsafety exists, right, where a single small fat finger can process. So
Mhm.
how do companies solve the problem? They install gatekeepers.
Sure.
to people to review your change.
Only certain people can directly access the database, and you have to
Can
go
directly
through
access
them.
there, and they will
Yeah.
review your code.
Yep.
And I have a schema ready that is ready to be deployed, but this DBA is on vacation. Now I have to wait 3 days for them to come back,
Yeah.
or they are busy taking backups,
Yep.
so they are not available.
Yep.
Because a DBA's job is not to wait for you to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
That's not their priority to review your schema change.
Yep.
So the entire process becomes a huge headache.
Hmm.
And so uh, Sam, who is our chief product officer, he kind of developed that system within GitHub in some sort.
Hmm. Like
So
an
when he came,
automated
he came. He said,
deployment scheme.
I know what the developers want,
Yeah.
and this is what you're going to." So this whole thing was his idea. Uh,
That's awesome.
to say that, and you can see like in how the developer community is responding to these features. They're saying, "I've been waiting for this all my life." Is is
Yeah.
what the developer is saying,
Yeah.
which is like self-serve safe schema deployments
Yeah. With the full power of SQL, just with none of the hassle.
with none of the hassle. And also, the way we deploy the schema is underlying. I don't know if you've heard of Gh-ost, which is the MySQL schema deployer,
No.
which is basically it allows you to deploy schemas without downtime.
Okay. Got it.
So, like if you have a billion rows in your table and you want to add a column,
Yeah. It's gonna take.
MySQL is going to lock that table,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and you're not going to be able to write to it.
Yep.
And Gh-ost actually allows you uh, to do the deployment without locking the table.
Got it.
Basically, it's called Gh-ost, which stands for GitHub Online Schema Tool, but it's also Gh-ost because it creates a Gh-ost table for you,
Oh, I see.
and
That's the trick. It
basically
just like copies
performs
stuff
an atomic
over. Okay. Yeah.
switch.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Vitess has the same technology called vReplication
Hmm.
as a core primitive that you can use.
That's convenient.
And the author of Gh-ost coincidentally happens to work for PlanetScale, and coincidentally decides to implement that same feature in
Yeah.
Vitess.
Yeah.
So the same offline schema deployment now
Yeah.
uh,
I
is
mean,
available through Vitess.
I feel like every organization or company that operates a database, they over time accumulate a bunch of scripts that automate certain tasks. Whether it's a schema deploy or
Yeah,
pulling certain pieces of information. It sounds like you're just like productizing all of that and turning it into like a out
yeah,
of the
yeah.
box, non-hacky, non-duct taped solution.
Exactly. Like, I mean, it's the writing is on the wall, right? The GitHub kind of showed this model
Yeah,
for source code uh, already as
like they
a
made.
viable model, right? Where they took away what each enterprise had internally and productized it as a generic, uniform method of managing source code.
Yeah,
And now enterprises are all moving towards that, right? Instead of having each one implementing their own way of managing source code,
yeah,
uh, we are kind of doing the same thing for databases.
yeah. Why is it that the databases themselves uh, didn't do this, or like why did it take someone external to the database communities and companies to go and build a system like this that's super
Well,
developer
I
friendly?
consider myself part of the database community. I'm
Okay,
so
so
I
you're at
feel
the
like
foot. Yeah,
I am the database community. I'm
yeah.
part of the database community that is responding. And if you look at Shlomi's work, I'm throwing all these are all people I would say are awesome to interview. Sam, Shlomi,
Okay, cool.
you should get them when you can.
Yep, yep.
Shlomi is an angel, so you should totally get him. You should see some of his presentations. They're really awesome.
Yeah,
Um, so that's essentially what Shlomi has been doing. That has been his personal, mission.
yeah, yeah.
You could, and his tools are some of the best tools for MySQL. This Gh-ost is one, Orchestrator is another one,
Yeah.
which actually manages failovers. When a MySQL goes down, it
Hmm.
automates. Previous to Orchestrator, a DBA had to, a sysadmin or a DBA had to go in and manually do this.
Mm-hmm.
So he automated. He has that empathy, that developer empathy,
Yep. Yep.
and he developed many of these things. Um, and yeah, and it was amazing when he finally came, and when we talked to him, he said, "You know what? Vitesse is putting all this together.
Yeah.
I want to do this."
Yeah. That's
So it was
awesome.
awesome. Yeah,
It seems like very serendipitous.
yeah.
And you all just launched recently, and from what I understand, it was a wildly successful launch.
It
Uh,
was exciting. It was a little more successful than we expected.
a little too successful. What
Yes.
happened?
So we um, internally we run on Kubernetes. By the way, we run
Okay. Cool.
Vitess on Kubernetes, and on we are running on EKS.
Okay.
There are limits. There are all kinds of limits that exist if you're running in the cloud, and they are
Quotas like.
not all explicit. You have to know what they are. You
Okay.
have to find out what they are. When you hit a limit, you don't know, the error doesn't always tell you, oh, you hit this limit, go and change it. That's not how things fail.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out. You have to reverse engineer from the error that, oh, there's
What sort of limits are we talking about here?
the obvious ones, like the obvious ones are like,
CPU,
machine quota
Okay.
limit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but there are underlying limits about how many EBS instances you can
Oh, interesting.
provision,
Huh.
right? So that, like, sometimes exhibits as a timeout.
Ah, sure. And then you're like, okay, yeah. Timeout is just like the
Because we
bane.
are like many stacks higher, right? We are
Yeah.
on, like, we are
Yeah.
EKS, there's PVC, there's
Yeah.
PVs, there's like
Yeah.
so many layers, and you see the outer error. So I think we hit every limit on day one of our launch.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, it was interesting. Fortunately, we have an awesome team of engineers. They
Yeah.
quickly moved to them, and believe it or not, this goes to Nick, our VP.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that this was possible. I think something to do with the fact that he had been at GitHub and
Sure.
knew. So when we did all the features, we had implemented read-only mode,
Good call.
and we had to use it.
And everyone else got just like a join the wait
Um,
list page,
yeah, they're
or
saying
okay.
like, okay, wait till we are available again, and we'll
Okay,
let
yeah.
you sign up.
That's great. That's great. So, we're almost out of time, but as kind of a last parting note, if you were to ask the people listening or watching this, if there's one thing you want them to do after this episode, what would that be?
I say just go try PlanetScale. It is an amazing. It's the way I see it is it's a mind altering experience. Like, it changes the way you look at things.
Hmm.
Like, the way I see it is, once you've seen this, you cannot go back to something else.
Hmm.
That's what I feel like. Uh, uh, like, another cool thing, for example, is like, you request a database,
Yeah.
and then you have to go have coffee, right? Because
Gotta
we
wait
give
for
you a
the.
database now. You request a database. Like, when we are doing our alpha
Wow.
thing, the person clicked a database, say request a database, and it says, here it is. Like, says, what? Do I have to go look somewhere else, or is this done? No, it
That's
is done. You
amazing.
can you can use it. So things like that. These are simple. These are subtle things, but these are things that people value.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that we have done with PlanetScale.
I'm definitely going to try that out. I was actually hacking on just like a little side project with my brother last weekend, and it
Huh.
got to the point where we needed to stand up some sort of backend data store. and we're like, oh, let's just install MySQL. That'll be easy. And we didn't get through it. We had to go we probably spent at least an hour trying to go through the motions, get it all set up right in the way that we had to, and then it was time for dinner. So if we had only used PlanetScale, we might have a working application by now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna check that out. Well, Sugu, thanks so much for taking the time. This was awesome. I feel like we could spend multiple hours. There's like so many things I want to hear about PayPal.
I would
YouTube,
say talk to these other people that I
Okay,
mentioned.
cool.
They are definitely worth talking to.
We'll get 'em
They'll
on the
give you a
show.
very different perspective than mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Cool. Thank you.